Peace and love to everybody. Welcome to the Daryl's Corbin Mystery School, the home of the esoteric and metaphysical knowledge. It's always a pleasure to see y'all step inside the channel. Now, as always, class is in session. Today is going to be a very special presentation. I mean, they always are, but this is going to be an amazing episode today. Here's why. We're going to be doing some role playing today. You have heard right. We're going to be doing some role playing today. We're going to get into more of the origins of what do our skin color really means to us. The makings of our skin color, the origins, the spiritual purpose that makes us who we are. You know, you might hear some people say there's nothing much to a color except a color. By the end of this presentation, I want you to agree or disagree. But I promise you, by the end of this video, you will know a lot more about your skin color and the purpose of who you are. No matter if you're black, no matter if you're brown, no matter if you're white, no matter if you're yellow. We're going to be learning a little bit more today about the origins of our skin color and the spiritual purpose of the makings of who we are. Each race, respectfully, will know a little bit more about the origins of their skin color today. So I thank you for tuning in to the Daryl's Corbin Mystery School. Class is now in session. Now, I just got finished saying that we're going to be role playing. Well, I personally will be playing the role of Rudolf Steiner. Now, in a few minutes, I'm going to let you know, break down who Rudolf Steiner was. I'm going to play the role of Rudolf Steiner. To my people out there in YouTube land, to my elite enlightened ones, you will be playing the role of European men, the high class, the richest of the richest, the most intellect minds. You will be in this auditorium, this church even, this temple, listening to me speak and give knowledge on the ancient history of our civilization. This is going to be very interesting tonight. Once again, I'm going to be Rudolf Steiner. You're going to be European men from the 1923, listening to my speech and taking everything that I am saying into seriousness and literacy. Because this will be the making of future generations to come. And remind you, we're going to be in 1923. I'm going to be Rudolf Steiner. You're going to be a group of European men in 1923 listening to what I have learned and the thesis that I have brought together to you on the origins on this episode of our color. Are you with me? It's going to be a very interesting one. It's going to be like biology, esoteric biology. Rudolf Joseph Lorenz Steiner was an Austrian occultist, social reformer, architect, esoterist, and claimed clairvoyant. Steiner gained initial recognition at the end of the 19th century as a literary critic and published works including The Philosophy of Freedom. For my people out there who was inspired and motivated by the brother Bobby Hemmett, just like I was, you have heard him talk about all the people that he has studied and all the books that he studied from and all the authors that he has studied from. Gerald Massey was one of these authors. H.P. Blavatsky also was one of those, and Rudolf Steiner. People from the 1800s that traveled, that have explored all ancient parts of civilization and have spent buku years doing it. They traveled all across the world, Africa, Europe, Asia, and traveled these places and have been deep into the tribes, deep into their spiritual beliefs and practices and they came back to their rightful countries and have give their people this knowledge. So when we talk about African Americans and being slaves and the Atlantic slave trade and what they were going through, some being sold off to slave masters at that time, when that was going on this side, you had Europeans who were traveling all across the world and getting the ancient knowledge from all over, even to the people on the other side that were being enslaved and captured, getting their knowledge as well. And they were bringing it back to their rightful countries and teaching their people. So I'm going to be reading. We're going to be role playing. I'm going to break down in 1923 what Rudolf Steiner told these elite, high-class men. And there may have been some women in there, so I don't want to discriminate as well. But these were the elite, the ones who heard this and kept it close-knit so they can further evolve civilization in their own liking. So, once again, before I start reading now, and I thank you for your patience, we are role-playing. I'm going to be Rudolf Steiner. And a message to my religious family, whether Islam, whether Christianity, whether Judea. You're going to have to go past, if you are still spiritually on a journey and you still want to know more and haven't been fully fed through your churches, then you have to go past your Matthew, Luke's, your canonical gospels. You have to go to some authors who have the work, but you weren't privileged. Your teachers and your preachers, they're not going to tell you about these people. You have to be on the path to understand and search enough to discover these people or rediscover these people, such as Rudolf Steiner. Now, let's go. Once again, I'm Rudolf Steiner. My people out there who's watching, you are now the high-class European men and women who are now benefiting from this in 1923, March the 3rd, 1923 in Dornach. That's Dornach. I do believe that's in Switzerland. So we all the way in Switzerland making it happen in 1923. You ready? We are now role-playing. I'm going to get me a drink of water. I am Rudolf Steiner. You know who you are. Gentlemen. Now, gentlemen, I have not yet fully answered the last question about colors. We will take a little further or complete it. First of all, today we have to consider a most interesting question, namely the human color itself. You know, of course, that over the face of the earth are people showing skins differing in color. The Europeans to whom we belong are called the white race. Well, we know indeed that a man in Europe is not quite healthy when he is cheese white. He is healthy when he shows his natural, fresh color created by himself inwardly through the white. But now, besides this European coloring, we have 4 other principal colors of the skin. We will consider this a little today because one actually understands the whole of history and the whole social life, even modern social life, only if one can turn to the race characteristics of humanity. Only then can one rightly understand the spiritual element if one first studies how the spirit works in man precisely through skin color. Let me read that again. But now, besides this European coloring, we have 4 other principal colors of the skin. We will consider this a little today because one actually understands the whole of history and the whole social life, even modern social life, only if one can turn to the race characteristics of humanity. Only then can one rightly understand the spiritual element if one first studies how the spirit works in man precisely through the skin color. I should now like to put the racial color before you in this way. Let us start from Europe, where we ourselves are living. Here we have, therefore, I can draw it for you only roughly. First, Europe, bordering on Europe, Asia, England, Ireland. Here, Japan, China. Further, India, India proper, Arabia, or Arabia. Here we have Africa, thus Europe, Asia, Africa. And I will be showing you a drawing in a few that breaks all this down. But back to character. Now we will sketch in the men as they are in the corresponding regions. We call ourselves in Europe the white race. If we go over to Asia, we have the yellow race. Principally in Asia. And when we go over to Africa, there we have the black race. Those are the original races. All others living in these regions are the consequence of migration. So if we ask, what races belong to these parts of the earth? Then we must say, to Asia belongs the yellow race, the Mongolian. To Europe belongs the white race, or the Caucasian race. And to Africa belongs the black or Negro race. The Negro race does not belong to Europe, and it is naturally only mischievous that it now plays so great a role in Europe. These races are, as it were, at home in these three parts of the earth. Now we will consider the color of these three races. I have already told you that color has to do with light. When one sees the black of universal space through the illumined universe, then it appears blue. When one sees light illumination through the dark air, it appears reddish, as in the glow of morning and evening. Let us just simply consider colors on ordinary objects. You first distinguish, let us say, black and white. These are the most striking colors, black and white. What is the position then with a black body? A black body assimilates in itself all the light that falls upon it and mirrors back none at all. I'm going to read that again to my class out there in Switzerland, 1923. Let us just simply consider colors on ordinary objects. You first distinguish, let us say, black and white. These are the most striking colors, black and white. What is the position then with a black body? A black body assimilates in itself all the light that falls upon it and mirrors back none at all. So if you have a black body, it takes the light that falls on it, absorbs everything into itself, and gives none back. It therefore appears black because it reflects no light. When you have a white body, it says, I do not need light. I do not need the light. I will only use what is in myself. I send all the light back. It is therefore white. You can study that more closely if you consider the following. Suppose there is some object on the earth which takes up all light. In the first place, it gives back a little light, and so appears bright. But it allows itself time it takes up the most light possible. When it can take up no more and one brings it into the light, then it appears black. Now suppose there is a tree. It stands at first on the earth's surface and takes up a certain amount of light, but it absorbs a good deal of both light and warmth. That goes on until the time when it falls below the earth. When for a length of time, but that means thousands or millions of years, it has remained beneath the earth, what does it become? Black coal. It becomes black because it took up light and warmth into itself when it was a tree. It does not give that out unless we destroy it. If we burn it, then it yields, but if we only bring it into the air for a time, it keeps it. It has taken up so much light and warmth that it gives nothing out. We must destroy it. That is the condition of coal. Let us suppose that the object does not take up further light. It sends all back again. Then something of a nature will be white. That is the snow in winter. It reflects all light. It takes up no light and no warmth, and this becomes white. You see, by this difference between coal and snow, the relation that exists between objects on Earth and universal space. Let me say that again. You see, by this difference between coal and snow, the relation that exists between objects on Earth and universal space. To my people out there in the crowd, do you mind if I read that again? You see, by this difference between coal and snow, the relation that exists between objects on Earth and universal space. Let us apply that to man in universal space. Let me read that again. Let us apply that to man in universal space. Let us look just at the blacks in Africa. These blacks in Africa have the characteristics of absorbing from the universe. So class, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back and then I'm going to go further, just so we are on the same page. And every race will, by the end of this presentation, know a lot more about each other. We're back at role playing. Rudolf Steiner. You see by this difference between coal and snow, the relation that exists between objects on Earth and universal space. Let us apply that to man in universal space. Let us look just at the blacks in Africa. These blacks in Africa have the characteristics of absorbing from the universe all light and all warmth. They take it up. Now this light and this warmth in the universe cannot go through the whole body because a human being is always a human being, even if he is a black one. It does not go through the whole body but stops short on the surface of the skin, and therefore the skin itself becomes black. Thus, a black man in Africa is one who absorbs the most possible warmth and light from the universe and assimilates it in himself. Through the fact that he does this, the forces of the cosmos work over the whole man like this, and it says see drawing. You will see the drawing in a minute. He takes up light and warmth everywhere and uses it in himself. Now there must be something which helps him in the assimilation. Well, you see, what helps him in particular is his postural brain. In the Negro, the postular, P-O-S-T-E-R-I-O-R, the postural brain is specially developed. That goes to the spinal cord and can work over all the light and warmth that is in him. This is the drawing. Don't worry, it'll focus up soon. This is the drawing that Rudolf Steiner did for the audience, that I did for the audience. As you can say, this is going to be posture, brain. Let's see here. Here we go. So that's the black man right there. The first one's going to be the black man. The second one's going to be the yellow man. And then we can scroll over here. The last one's going to be the white man. So I just want to give you a quick look. And you see that the black man or the African man or the Negro man, his brain is positioned up front, which give him certain advantages. Everybody has their own advantages. This ain't a race presentation. This is a real presentation. But that's what makes it a race presentation. Because the more we know about ourselves, the more we each know our role on this planet and stop dividing each other. All right? So I'm going to read that again. Thus, a black man in Africa is one who absorbs the most possible warmth and light from the universe and assimilates it in himself. Through the fact that he does this, the forces of the cosmos work over the whole man. Like this. He takes up light and warmth everywhere and uses it in himself. Now there must be something which helps him in the assimilation. You see what helps him in particular is his postural brain. In the Negro, the postural brain is specially developed. That goes to the spinal cord and can work over all the light and warmth that is in him. Hence, all that is connected with the body and metabolism is strongly developed in the Negro. He has, as one says, a strong desire, life, instinct. And let me read that again. Hence, all that is connected with the body and metabolism is strongly developed in the Negro. He has, as one says, a strong desire, life, instinctive life. And since he actually has the sun-like light and warmth on the surface of his skin, his whole metabolism proceeds as if there was a cooking by the sun itself in his interior. Hence comes his desire, life. There is really a continuous cooking going on within him. And what strokes the fire is the postural brain. Family, are you with me today? Because I don't mind going back and reading this clearly so you get an understanding. This is class. This is like biology class to the utmost here. Each race, this is not going to be a long presentation, but it's going to be an accurate presentation. Each race has their own special ability and their own special meaning on this planet. We are now learning that the black race, the Negro race, is connected and protected by the cosmos. He takes the light from the universe and the cosmos and gives nothing back. This is a 1923 presentation given by Rudolf Steiner to the high-class civilization and the elite and the intellectual ones. In 1923, we in 2023. So when you talk about eugenics and Planned Parenthood and all that type of talk, this is some of the work. I gotta keep going now. I'm gonna go. Listen, we can have comment talks and let's keep on going now. I don't want to get thrown off here. I'm gonna read that last part again though. Hence, all that is connected with the body and metabolism is strongly developed in the Negro. He has, as one says, a strong desire, life, instinctive life. And since he actually has the sun-like light and warmth on the surface of his skin, his whole metabolism proceeds as if there were a cooking by the sun itself in his interior. Hence comes his desire, life. There is really a continuous cooking going on within him, and what strokes the fire is the postural brain that he has up front. Sometimes man's organization throws off further byproducts. That is to be seen just in the Negro. The Negro not only has this cooking in his organisms, it not only boils there, but he also has a frightfully crafty and observant eye. He peers craftily and very observantly. You can easily take this as a contradiction, But it is like this. If there in front is the nerve of the eye, see drawing, the nerves go just into the postural brain. They cross there. The nerve goes in the postural brain, and since that is specially developed in the Negro, therefore he peeps out so craftily, is such a sly observer of the world. If one begins to understand the matter, it all becomes clear. But modern science does not make such studies as we do. But modern science does not make such studies as we do, and so it knows nothing about these things. I want you all to share this presentation. Go back, listen to this presentation, because we are understanding the origins of our skin color and spirituality as it is in real time. We're just on the black race. We're about to go on the yellow race and the white race soon. Let us now pass over from the black to the yellow man. Yellow is already related to the red, and so light is reflected to some extent, but much is absorbed. However, the yellow man throws back more light than a black. The black man is an egoist, egoist. He takes up all light and all warmth. The yellow Mongolian gives indeed some light back, but he absorbs a great deal. That makes him what he is. See drawing. Thus he takes up much light but gives some back. He contents himself with less. The less amount of light cannot work in the whole metabolism, and so the metabolism must be referred to its own force. That works chiefly in the breathing and blood circulation. Thus, in the yellow race, Japanese, Chinese, the light and warmth work principally in breathing and blood circulation. If you have ever met a Japanese, you will have noticed how he pays attention to his breathing. When he talks to you, he keeps himself under restraint so that his breathing may be in good order. He has a certain feeling of well-being in breathing. This means that less is worked over in his interior. It is principally worked upon in the breast. See drawn, it says. This caused the yellow man to develop strongly not the postural brain, but the middle brain. It is there that his breath and blood circulation are maintained. The yellow Asiatic lives rather less in the metabolism. You can notice that too by his walking. He has a less energetic walk. He does not work so strongly with the limbs and the metabolism. The Negroid is more to the fore in racing and outer movement, that it is governed by desire. The Asiatic yellow man develops more an inner dream life, and therefore the whole Asiatic civilization has this dreamer element. Let me read that again. You can notice that too by his walking. He has a less energetic walk. He does not work so strongly with the limbs and the metabolism. The Negroid is more to the fore in racing and outer movement, that is governed by desires. The Asiatic yellow man develops more an inner dream life, and therefore the whole Asiatic civilization has this dreamer element. Thus, he is not only living more in himself, he absorbs something from the universe, and so it comes about that the Asians have such wonderful poems about the whole universe. The Negroid has not got this quality. He takes up everything into his metabolism, and really he only digests the universe. The Asiatic breathes it into himself, has it in his blood circulation, and so he can also give it out from himself when awake. For speech is in fact only a metamorphosed breathing. Yes, gentlemen, they are beautiful, wonderful poems. The Asians are altogether an inward people. They scorn the European today because they say they are external people. We shall see why immediately. That then is the yellow race, and it is connected with color in the way I have told you. Now let us look at ourselves in Europe. We are a white race in regard to the universe, for we must give back all external light. We give back all light and, in fact, all warmth too. The warmth has to be very powerful if we want to take it into us. And when it is not there, we are stunned, as we see by the Eskimos. There is the human being, it says, see drawing, of such a nature that he throws back all light and warmth. He absorbs them only when they become powerful. He throws them back and develops only the light and warmth that arise in his inner being through his own inner activity. Audience, I want to read that again. Now, let us look at ourselves in Europe. We are a white race in regard to the universe, for we must give back all external light. We give back all light and, in fact, all warmth too. The warmth has to be very powerful if we want to take it into us. As we see by the Eskimos, there is the human being of such a nature that he throws back all light and warmth. He absorbs them only when they become powerful. He throws them back and develops only the light and warmth that arise in his inner being through his own inner activity. Yes, neither breathing nor blood circulation comes to help him, nor the creation of warmth, but he must himself work out light and warmth through his brain, that is, through his head. We actually throw back all external light and warmth. We ourselves must give the color to our blood, that then presses through the white, and so we obtain the human color of the Europeans. It is from within. And so indeed we are such a white body as assimilates everything within and throws back all light and warmth. And whereas the Mongolian mainly needs the middle brain, we European uses the frontal brain, the anterior brain, anterior. Through this fact, the following is shown. The man with the postural brain has mainly the desire life of instinct. The one here with the middle brain has the feeling life, situated in breast. And we poor Europeans, have the thought life that sits in the head. Thereby, as it were, we do not feel our inner man at all, for we feel the head only when it is ill. Otherwise, we do not feel it. Audience, I'm going to read that again. And whereas the Mongolian mainly needs the middle brain, we Europeans use the frontal brain and the anterior brain. Through this fact, the following is shown. The man with the postural brain, the black, has mainly the desire life of instinct. The one here with the middle brain, the yellow race, has the feeling life situated in breast. And we Europeans, we poor Europeans, have the thought life that sits in the head. Thereby, as it were, we do not feel our inner man at all, for we feel the head only when it is ill. Otherwise, we do not feel it. But this makes us aware of the whole outer world, and we easily become materialistic. The Negro becomes no materialist. He remains man inwardly. Only he develops the inner desire life. Nor does the Asiatic become materialistic. He remains at the feeling life. He does not bother about external life as the European does. Of the latter, he says, he is only an engineer concerning himself only with outer life. He is, in fact, since he must develop his frontal brain assigned to the outer world, and everything is connected with that. Audience, we are in 1923. We are in Switzerland, Germany. I am Rudolf Steiner. You are a group of men, European men. The world is changing. We have the opportunity to shape this world as we feel. We have the power and the knowledge by the ancient ones in this year, 1923. Knowing what we know, we can take this and mold and grow the civilization to our liking. So when the millennium comes, we will have won and conquered. This makes us aware of the whole outer world, and we easily become materialistic. The Negro becomes no materialist. He remains inwardly. Only he develops the inner desire life. Nor does the Asiatic become materialistic. He remains at the feeling life. He does not bother about external life, as the European does. Of the latter, he says, he is only an engineer concerning himself only with outer life. He is, in fact, since he must develop his frontal brain, assigned to the outer world, and everything is connected with that. Thus, we are the white race. Inwardly, the white is colored through our blood. Then there is the Mongolian, the yellow race, and then there is the black race, and we can understand that quite well when we start from the colors, then the whole thing is explained. Now you only need to consider how that is. The Negroes live on a part of the earth where the sun oppresses them very much indeed, penetrates into them. So they give themselves up to it, absorb it fully into their bodies, become friendly with it, reject nothing. With the Asians, more comes to them from the heat of the earth. They do not give so much back. They are no longer so friendly with the sun. Wasn't there in China or Japan where they were building another sun or building a sun to block the sun? Now you only need to consider how that is. The Negroes live on a part of the earth where the sun oppresses them very much indeed, penetrates into them, so they give themselves up to it, absorb it fully into their bodies, become friendly with it, reject nothing. With the Asians, more comes to them from the heat of the earth. They do not give so much back. They are no longer so friendly with the sun. And with the Europeans, here the fact is that they would actually obtain nothing from the sun if they did not evolve their own human element. Europe has therefore always been the starting point for all that develops the human element in connection with the outside world. Inventions have very seldom been made in Asia. They can be assimilated, but inventions themselves by which the Asians can apply what is produced through practical experience with the other world, these the Asians cannot make. For instance, this is what once happened with a screw steamer. Some Japanese had learned about it through stealthy watching Europeans, and they also wanted to manage it alone. Previously, the Europeans had always been in charge and directed things. Now the Japanese wanted to manage the steamer alone. The English remained behind on the shore. Suddenly, the Japanese who were on board fell into evident despair, for the steamer continually revolved round itself. They could not make out how to bring proper forward motion to the revolving movement. The Europeans who knew how to do it naturally grinned tremendously on the shore. This independent thought which the Europeans developed in familiarity with the environment is not possessed by the Asiatic people. The Japanese would therefore develop all European inventions, but they would not think out something by themselves. As regards the human race, men all over the earth are actually dependent on one another. They must help each other. That is a consequence of their natural ability. That is connected, you see, with the whole of man's development. Think for a moment of a black man. His desired life is especially evolved. All that boils in the interior, this gives much ash, and the ash is deposited into the bones. He is therefore more developed in his bones than a man of the white race. The latter rather directs to the blood what he has inwardly, and his bones are more finely developed. Thus, the Negro has coarsely developed bones, the European has more finely developed bones, and the Asiatic, the yellow race, stand in between. You can observe by the manner in which a Japanese stands and walks, that in his bone structure he stands between the European and the African. The Africans have these strong bones continuously in movement. The European has more of the blood system. The Japanese has all that acts on the breathing and from the breath on the blood circulation. But now, gentlemen, men on earth do not simply remain where they are. If one were to go back into ancient times, one would already find that the yellow race belonged to the Asia, the white race to the Europe, and the black race to Africa. But it has also always happened that people have wandered out. And it can happen that either your luck and it can happen that either your yellow wandered to the east or the blacks wandered to the west. And that was once done. And that was once done. The yellow have always wandered eastwards. There they have come to islands, to those islands which lie between Asia and Australia. When the yellow wander over to the east, they become brown. There arose the Malayans, who became brown. Why? Yes, why do they become brown? What does it mean to become brown? Well, when they are yellow, they throw back a definite degree of light. The rest they absorb. When they became brown, when they become brown through the different way in which they now live in the sun, for they come from another part of the earth, then they throw back, reflect less light. They take more light into themselves, so these brown Malayans are migrated Mongolians. But who now, since the sun works on them differently, accustom themselves to absorb more light and more warmth? But consider how they have not the nature towards this. They have already accustomed themselves to have a bony structure which limits them to a definite degree of warmth. They have not the right nature for taking up so much warmth as they now take up as Malayans. The result of this is that they begin to become unusable people, people who break to pieces in the body, whose bodies die away. This is in fact the case with the Malayan population. They die of the sun, they die of the fast. One can say that whereas the yellow, the Mongolians, are still men in full strength, the Malayans are already a dying race. They are dying out, it says. In ancient times, the Negroes wandered over to the west. Today's circumstances are different. They can do it less. But they wandered westwards in ancient times. There had always been a ship passage, and there were still islands over the whole Atlantic Ocean, for earlier this was in fact a continent. Now when the blacks wander west, they could no longer absorb so much light and warmth as in their native Africa. Less light and warmth reaches them. What is the result? Their nature is organized to take up as much as possible of light and warmth, and actually in that way to become black. Now, they do not get as much light and warmth as they need in order to become black, so they become copper red, become Indians. That comes from the fact that they are obliged to reflect something of light and warmth. That gleams a copper red. Copper is itself a body which must reflect a little light and warmth. They cannot hold out against this and so die in the West as Indians. They are again a race that is going under. They die from their own nature, which gets too little light and warmth. They die from the earthly, and the earthly element of their nature is their desired life. They can no longer develop that properly, whereas they still get strong bones. Since much ash goes into their bones, these Indians can no longer hold out against it. Their bones become frightfully strong, but so strong that the whole man goes to pieces by reason of his bones. You see, this is how things have developed, so that these 5 races have come about. One might say black, yellow, white, in the center. As a side branch of the black, the copper red, and as a side branch of the yellow, the brown. Those are always the dying out parts. The whites are actually those who involve the human element, and so they are assigned to themselves. When they migrate, they somewhat take on the characteristics of all of the other regions. Yet they do not go to pieces as a race, but rather as individuals. But instead, they do something else altogether. You see, all that I have been describing to you are things that go on in man's body and the soul and the spirit, are more independent of it. Let me read that again. You see, all that I have been describing to you are things that go on in a man's body, and the soul and spirit are more independent of it. And so soul and spirit can be most active in the European, since they make most claim on him. He can more easily bear going into different parts of the earth. Hence also once came about the starting from up above there. A great migration of people went over as far as India. A stream of white people struck into a region where the population was yellow. Thus arose the Hindus, a mixture of Mongolian and Caucasian. Hence came to the very beautiful Indian poetry, the most beautiful in existence, but again at the same time something of which notes that has already become inherent. because the white element is not in its own territory. And so one can say that a white man can go everywhere today in Low America, and all the white inhabitants of America let me read that again. And so one can say that the white man can go everywhere today, even Low America, and all the white inhabitants of America have come from Europe. The white element therefore comes into America regions, but something happens to man when he comes to America from the Europe for which he is naturally constituted. It means that some demand must be made on a postural brain. As European in Europe, he has made demands chiefly on his frontal brain. Now in America, there flourish those people who were once actually decayed Negroes. That is to say, they do not flourish, they are going to pieces. The Red Indians. When one comes there, a conflict always arises in the head between the anterior and the postural brain. It is found that if a family moves to America and settles there, then the descendants have the peculiar of acquiring somewhat longer arms. The arms and legs grow rather more when the European settles in America, not in himself, of course, but in his descendants. That comes from the fact that these move over through the middle brain to the postural brain when as European once comes to America. But at the same time, something very peculiar comes about in the American. Now the European lives entirely in his inner being, does he not? Especially if he is a thinker. If he is no thinker, he barely reflects at all. But that produces a life which is not quite filled up. But as soon as the European settles in America, he no longer is such a broader. So the following arises. When you read a European book, things are always proved. One cannot get away from the proving. One reads through a whole book, reads through 400 pages, only proofs. Even if it is a novel, there is always proving. For the most part, nothing is proved at the end of the 400th page. The American does not do that. When you read an American book, everything is put forward as a statement. There again it is as going back nourished by the instinct. The animal proves nothing. The lion does not prove that he would devour another animal. He would devour it. If the European wants to do anything, it must first be proved. Today, that is the great difference between European and the American. Europeans prove, Americans affirm. But that is not to say that what they affirm cannot be just as true. It is even realized more through the whole man. The Americans have that in advance of the European. On the one hand, they approach decadence. The American Indian is decadent. But when one begins to go to pieces, one becomes clever. So the European becomes clever when they go over. They disaccustom themselves from the proving. This wanting to prove is not exactly a quality to bring one forward. If one is to do something in the morning, one can begin with proving, and at night on going to sleep, one can still do not. One can still not do it, because one still must prove. The American would not do that because he has not been trained to at all be proved. And so it comes that America will quite certainly go ahead of Germany in some things. One can make quite interesting observation. If one takes up a European book, it proves somewhat as follows. Let us say it is a book about the digestive system on the cockchafer. Such books are indeed written. It begins by proving, and I quote, the animal species of the cockchafer contains also digestive organs. They only withdraw from ordinary observation. One must penetrate deeper into the whole organization of the cockchafer. Well, so it goes on. One has to prove everything. The American begins with, and I quote, when one dismembers a cockchafer, then one finds in it that and that. He affirms and he observes. And so you see in the case of the Europeans, they no longer develop their racial character on behalf of their whole organization. They develop rather the qualities of soul and spirit. For this reason, they can penetrate into all other parts of the world. The process of becoming decayed is naturally a slow one. The sun always sends more of less of warmth and light down to the earth. Now we have the vernal point in the fishes. As I have told you, previously it was in the ram, Aries, after some time it would be in Aquarius. Only then will a true American civilization come. Before then, civilization will go more and more over to America. One who can already see today how powerful the Americans are becoming and how Europe is getting increasingly impotent. And the reason why no kind of peace can now come to Europe is because Europe no longer actually understands its own land. Now all civilization moves over to America. It will take a long time, but when the sun's vernal point has entered the sign of Aquarius, then it will send down its rays to Earth just in such a favorable way that the American culture and civilization was especially powerful that is already to be seen today. It is very remarkable in Europe over here, what we call anthroposophy, anthroposophy, that's anthroposophy, can be developed. It must be developed out of the spirit. That does not come at all out of racial characteristics. It must be developed out of spirit, and the men who are unwilling to approach the spirit will plunge Europe into disaster. The Americans do not yet need it, especially those who travel over there. Remember, this is in 1923. For they can still maintain themselves on racial characteristics, and so over in America, curiously enough, arises something remarkable. Anyone who reads American books really attentively, who reads parliamentary speeches, one who takes a general interest in what goes on in America today, will say to himself, good gracious, that is very remarkable. We in Europe develop anthroposophy out of the spirit. Over there, they develop something that is a kind of wooden doll of anthroposophy. Everything's become materialistic. But for one who is not a fanatic, there is something similar in American culture to what is official science in Europe. Only everything there is wooden. It is not yet alive. We can make it alive in Europe out of the spirit. Those over there take it out of instinct. You will see one card notice that in all detail, the time will only one day come when the American's wooden man, which actually everyone is still, when he will begin to speak, then he will have something to say very similar to Europeans. And I'm going to stop right there. It goes on and it goes on. But at 51 minutes, even with the last couple of minutes of this babbling, you got a gist of the origins, the purpose, the spiritual purpose, what is the makings of our skin color in each race. For the yellow man, you see that he is more in his field about who he is. The Negro, the African race, is more about desire life. They have a very observant eye. And the white race is very materialistic and intellectual, which gives them advantage over all the races to a certain extent because they are more focused on the outer world, where the other two races are more inwardly spiritual. With the yellow race and the Negro race, they are actually governed by the universe. The Negro race much more. So I thank you for watching this presentation, for joining in on this role play, because you can understand now that Rudolf Steiner gave this to the people in 1923 in Switzerland. It wasn't that long before that the Atlantic slave trade came, and they were bringing people from Africa and other indigenous places to become slaves and giving them the Bible, taking their magical, traditional, tribal rituals and spirituals and giving them their own religions and a distorted version of it. So I hope you got a little bit more, all races got a little bit more of who they are spiritually and what color plays, the role that it plays within us all. So you can rewind this back, share it, tell a friend to share, subscribe, leave a comment. This is Darren's Core Mystery School. We're getting bigger, we're getting better. Welcome to the age of Aquarius. Till next time.